Hello, everybody. Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is the Schaftlein Report. We're going to cover everything. We're going to cut through all the propaganda, give it to you straight from left, right, and center. The opinions are what counts. Hello, everybody. Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is the Schaftlein Report. It's the weekend edition, and we are going to cover everything that happened in American politics this past week. What a momentous week. Some very sad stuff, but some very exciting stuff coming up also. But first, I'd like to welcome a new guest to join Joe Visconti and myself today, Lieutenant Colonel Berney Flowers. Berney, welcome to Schaftlein Report, and I think you've got some news you want to share with our audience today.
Mark, I sure do. But first of all, how did I get on the Gateway Pundit? This is crazy. You guys are awesome, and I've been watching you for a while. But my news is I'm running for Congress.
Congratulations.
Right here in Maryland's 3rd District.
Well, tell us about the district, Berney. You've run there before. Give us the layout of the land, and then let's get on to some policy positions and why Marylanders are better off having you in Congress.
Well, it's very, very blue here. It is a Democrat stronghold. I'm sure you've heard of Governor Westmore or Taxmore. Taxes are too high. Most of the people here work for the federal government, and Mr. Trump has decided to reduce some of the roles of the federal government. But here's the bottom line. Our state is far too dependent upon the federal government, and they should be working to bring more business into the state. And that's what I'd like to see done. But, you know, the bottom line is there's a lot of liberals here, and they've been taken advantage by the government. This is a Democrat stronghold. And I just think that normal people, regular families need somebody to watch out for them. My background is 20 plus years in the military. I've got another 13 and a half years working as a senior civil servant, you might say. My last job was working for Mayorkas. You guys remember him?
Oh, yes. I
learned a lot of things. Yeah. So I kind of got the keys to the kingdom. I am somebody that knows about a lot about the inside of the federal government with my, 3 decades, and I've worked pretty much everywhere, and I know a lot of different things. I'm not bragging. I just get a regular guy with a lot of experience, and I want to use that for the American people. I want to use that for Maryland and straighten out some of these high costs that we have and lower some of the electric bills and just basically make the government work for the people. Right now, it's not working for the people.
Hey, Berney, you also authored a book, Black Values Matter. Talk a little bit about that. And then I also want our viewers to understand a little bit about your district that you're running in.
Okay. Well, that Black Values Matter was a passion project of mine. As soon as I retired from the military, I was so disgusted at the way that the Black population of the United States was basically wedded to the Democrat Party. And I want people to know that most Black people are conservative, but a lot of them just don't know it.
Well, that's been my impression forever. I mean, when I hear people talk about Black values, white values, Asian values, generally speaking, again, I've always viewed African American as conservative. And yet, look, Donald Trump got a bigger percentage of that vote in the last election than had previously happened. That's a good thing. And a lot of it came from young Black men, too. So
that's right.
So that happened. But I mean, the values, it seems to me, Berney, they're very similar. And Joe, I want to get you in here on this, too. You've known Berney for quite a while. But those values, the same values you're running for Congress on, are the same values. It doesn't matter what your skin color, your nationality. Most people, in my opinion, they want a fair shot at the economy, making a living. They want safety in their home. They want education for their kids. And they want the United States to prosper and to be a country that they can be proud of. I mean, what am I missing here?
You're not missing anything. You know, the issue of the day is the powers that be, and I will say the word Marxist, let's just call it what it is. They can't take us down militarily, so they attack the inner core of our population. And, you know, going back to Lyndon Johnson and his Great Society and all those sorts of things, They've separated the black family, separated the black man and the black woman. And the families, you've got families that have been 40, 50 years on public assistance, and that is not supposed to happen. Public assistance, subsidized housing, that's supposed to be a trampoline to spring you off to the next thing, not something that you're supposed to just, build families off for decades upon decades upon decades. And it's not right. It's not fair. It's demoralizing. It's dehumanizing. And I want to fix it. I want to help fix it. But most black people, as you were alluding to, are very, very conservative. We're the most churched people in the United States, but we don't vote that way. But I want to fix that. I want a national movement to get people to wake up and vote for their own best interest. And we haven't been doing that for a very, very long time.
Well, that's music to my ears. Joe, hop in here. I mean, listen, 2026 midterms are going to be very important. Donald Trump needs to continue to have Mike Johnson as Speaker controlling that House, and we need to retain the Senate. We'll get into topics, but Joe, chime in here real quick on what Berney's going to be doing here.
Well, having run in a very blue district here in Connecticut, I know what he's up against. We're first district in Connecticut is John Larson, and I spent a year on the trail. Berney knows how hard it is, what you put out. But that was in '08. These are different times. The wind's at Berney's back right now, and everyone is running in these blue districts because the public's much more open to sensibilities. And the church-going black community, they're very conservative because they believe in the Bible and they believe in the Ten Commandments and they follow that. And that is a holding on to the past in a way, the right past, the good past. And so I think the Christian movement in the country needs to ramp up politically from the black community. And I think it will. It's always been there. And I think they're waking up to not necessarily Republican versus Democrat evil. They're seeing things are evil and they have a conscience. And, maybe I've sinned, maybe I've done a bad thing, maybe this and that, but I know right from wrong. And that's what we're going through in this country. Everybody's being kind of spiritual. I've been saying this for the last month on the program, a spiritual awakening of right and wrong. And if I'm a sinner or I make mistakes, it doesn't mean I don't know right from wrong. And I'm not going to be a hypocrite by saying I'll stand for what's right, even if I fail and I'm weak. And that really is going to resound from everyone struggling financially. And the culture wars I think they're coming to a fever end at the point we're in. We're going to talk about the agenda today with all the things happening. You could just see the writing on the wall. So Berney, you give them hell out there and keep your head up. I know you will and you do, because if they get by us in the blue states, if we're not out there bleeding the Democrat Party politically and putting our voice out there in a time people want to hear it, they'll hit the red states. So we're the first line of defense. We are the first responders politically.
Well, let's Berney, let's get into some of the hot buttons of the week. I mean, we got a lot to cover here, guys. And look, the Charlie Kirk assassination has been the headline story. I mean, a horrific event, worldwide outpouring of emotion for Charlie Kirk. And the thing I think that I've taken away this week, Berney, just the additional evidence that's come out in this case, the disturbing facts, and as more evidence gets collected, the background of the shooter, what happened, how did this guy, who at one point was a normal kid, 4.0 grade point average, never had been arrested, had not been radicalized, but something snapped, and it happened. It wasn't because this guy was conservative. It was because he became a radical leftist. And Berney, your thoughts on that? And then equally as important, two-part question, the vile just response to some of these leftists, everything from teachers to students to public entertainers. And we'll get into that later. But again, the event itself and then the aftermath, Berney, your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I like to relate everything to Marxism. And we all know about Karl Marx. And the issue of the day is that we have enemies in the United States. We have enemies all over the world. They want to become, they don't like the ideas that we are the global hegemon. They can't fight us militarily, so they come at us through our children and through our weak points. And so this kid was radicalized some way. I mean, his father was a police officer of all things. You wouldn't expect that, but then you find him living with some transgender person. And I don't know how all this happened from a kid that seemed to be all American, but the truth is that, it happened. So why did it happen, and how can we prevent it in the future? Well, we live, our American values and our First Amendment are our biggest prize, but it's also our biggest vulnerability, because we can't just go and, we see somebody doing something that we don't like and go make them stop. No, 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 no. We can't do that. So somebody has to actually perform a negative act before we can actually do anything about it. But this kid, how he got radicalized, I still can't necessarily, the jury's still out. But we
Yeah.
do know that Kash Patel and crew are on the case. I read somewhere that, they found out that there is a whole team of people that were on some sort of Discord server, about 20 people backing him up and, encouraging him to do these negative things. And so there's more to follow on this thing. I'm straight up behind the Kash Patel effort and the FBI. There are some anomalies, but I don't necessarily want to speculate on those things just yet, because we got to get this guy prosecuted and jailed. I think they have the death penalty in Utah. But the issue today is what he did was terrible. Now, as far as this socialism that has pervaded our country, I mean, I saw this lady on TikTok, and she was complaining that she lost her job because she went on to social media and said some negative things about Charlie. Well, here's the thing. We have the First Amendment. Wonderful. But there's also consequences that come along with saying whatever you want to say. And a lot of these people they don't understand that there's consequences behind their speech. So I'm all for putting some of these people in their place. And what I mean by that is the marketplace is correcting a lot of these people. The marketplace is saying, I don't want this radicalized leftist working in my company.
Right.
When we were working when I was working at Fort Meade, for all those years, and those years that I was in the military, I didn't even go onto the social media because we were told to stay off it.
Okay.
So with that said, we have to understand that we do have consequences with our speech. So 3 cheers for Kash Patel.
Yeah, Bernie, I'm glad you mentioned Kash Patel, because I think Kash has done an outstanding job from the very beginning. It was Kash Patel who decided, against some of the local recommendations, to air the footage that they had, to air the pictures. And lo and behold, thank goodness that the father of the victim, father of the shooter, recognized him. And I caught Kash Patel's testimony in Congress against that Lane Bram Adams Schiff, who is, oh God, he's the worst of the worst. Cory Booker, I've got some respect for, but boy, he's trying to become a showboat too. But Schiff is nothing but a lowlife. And he committed fraud in that Russiagate case, as Patel mentioned. So to have Schiff open his mouth about anything, there's no credibility. So Kash did great there. But back to the investigation, I'm really proud of the job the FBI and Kash Patel did, capturing this guy within 33 hours. I mean, that's no easy task. Think about that. There were 3,000 people there, one shooter, a couple people arrested before him and then let go. One guy subsequently rearrested. But the bottom line is, with a crowd of 3,000, they got him within 33 hours. So Kash Patel is obviously doing something right with his team. And I'll tell you who else was impressive. That lead investigator that worked for Patel, the sheriff in Utah County, the governor, I thought did outstanding. They've received some criticism, but overall, my goodness, you can rate them slightly below A+, but they get a solid A in my book, Berney, for what they did. Joe, your thoughts on the aftermath of the shooting and some of the vile, disgusting things. Berney mentioned people losing jobs. You know what? There's an economic consequence. If you work for an employer and you state something that is categorically false, not an opinion, just a false statement, your employer has every right to say that does not represent my values. I don't want someone with those values working.
Well, since the birth of the social media world, it's been very difficult for Republicans and conservatives to actually say their mind. HR, human resources departments, for decades now, have been censoring us, and you get a call down there. I know many people come up to me on the street when I've been elected or running for office and said, "Oh, thank you for saying those things you say. I can't speak. I can't even say I like this. I can't say I support." Uh, you know, uh, Donald Trump or McCain or Romney or anything if I'm over here. Back then they hated them, the left. And so we've been censored for just common things such as supporting or saying something that we know is true. Look at the COVID and the vaccines and the masks censored, and that not all Republicans only did that. But so it's been the tables are turning a little differently. I just wish that the public wouldn't be so violent or so wish such violence. And again, a corporation, if you're not in the union, or if you are, you sign a contract for employment in there because a host of policies that you're supposed to read and sign, and then training about what and what not to do that does not align with the corporate policy. Never mind right and wrong, good and bad.
Well, you make a good point, Joe. And I mean, my opinion on this is it is crystal clear. It's not left, it's not right, it's right down the middle center. Yes, you have a right to First Amendment speech in this country. We're not disputing that. But you don't have a right to your own facts. And if you're on a public airwaves like Jimmy Kimmel was, you do not have a right to come out there and make false, misleading statements, particularly in the aftermath of a horrific event. And you know what? Employment has consequences. And in his case, when the local station owners felt that his commentary did not fit with the values and understanding of the morals of their audience, that was an easy decision. And as to these teachers in Texas, think about this. They're educating our kids. Do we really want to have someone educating our kids who basically applauds murder? I don't think so. And you may be in the far left wing teachers union. That's your right. But you don't, you have a right to express your opinion, but you don't have a right to disparage the people who you're teaching with some foul mouthed opinions to a far left wing radicalization and applaud the death of a human being. That crosses the line.
Well, Mark, this is a quick point based on that also, and it has to do with freedom of speech, the First Amendment, and the Second Amendment. When you misuse a gun, not in defense of yourself, but you misuse it criminally, that's a criminal act. When you misuse, as Trump is suing the New York Times for $15 billion, when you misuse slander and lies, it's subject not to criminal unless someone's killed by what you say, but it would be a civil penalty and you've got to pay the money. So these are violations of the First Amendment and violations of the Second Amendment. And with what we've been watching is the Second Amendment being used, violations of it against the First Amendment. And that's what that tour bus is all over the country doing. They've got images of JFK and these are the people that spoke their mind legally, First Amendment, and were shot for it. Charlie Kirk, RFK, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, you can go right down the line.
Yeah.
When the Second Amendment is gamed, and then both amendments start to get eroded. Censorship on the First Amendment and incremental infringement on the Second Amendment. And we've been watching that for decades happen. It's coming to a loggerhead right now.
Berney, I mean, people do have a right to First Amendment speech. But again, they don't have a right to their own facts. And I think the Department of Justice probing these left-wing radical groups like Antifa, I think is a step in the positive direction. Now, the standard line from the Democrats is, well, we should have done that with, right-wing groups. Well, guess what? What we've learned this week, they did. The Biden administration Justice Department investigated Turning Point USA, for goodness sakes. So, I mean, Berney, I don't want to say this is payback because that's not appropriate, but certainly in the aftermath of the shooting. But, people have to recognize, like that doctor in New Jersey that was pulling for death. And the nurse questions, says, wait a minute, you took an oath to preserve life. I mean, how do you, some of these things just cross the line. And to me, I think the president is right. I think Pam Bondi, the Department of Justice, I think we will get to a good place here. But to say that, this country's coming together, I'm not seeing evidence of that at all. Bernie, your thoughts on this?
Well, there's such a thing as the moral majority. You guys probably remember
Oh, yeah.
back in the 70s with Nixon. Nixon wasn't necessarily the worst guy. People are going to find out a lot of different things, but let's not talk about Nixon. Let's talk about the idea that the majority of people who make this country run, you don't hear from them. They're conservatives, but they work in jobs. They just want to mind their business and take care of their families. But those people are starting to rise up. And I used to be one of those guys. Again, I worked for 3 decades for Uncle Sam, either in the military or as a civilian. And I was told pretty much to keep my mouth closed, stay off the radar, certainly not on social media. But now I'm out. I can say my piece. A lot of the old guys that I came up with, the old graybeards out of Fort Meade, they're starting to say what they want to say too. And people are tired of being pushed around by this Marxist communist ideology. Nobody wants to, send their kid to school and find out that some teacher is indoctrinating their child. We've got to stop that. We got to stand up against that. And, to tell you the truth, I feel good about what I'm doing. I mean, yeah, I've run for Congress before, but, this is probably one of the hardest nuts to crack in the entire United States. Maryland is totally blue, and I've got to convince a bunch of independents to come along with me. But that's all right. I'm not daunted by that task. We'll fight the good fight. And, you guys having me on is part of the solution, and I'm very, very thankful for that. But bottom line is we just got to make some changes, and otherwise we're going to be lost. And this isn't just here in the United States. This Marxist ideology takeover is happening all over the world, and folks are now, thanks to Donald Trump, starting to stand up. They're carrying Trump signs in Japan. They're carrying Trump signs in England. They're waking up and they're realizing that this whole global thing, this global coup, has to be stopped.
It's interesting you mentioned the president, and he was in London last went Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And on Thursday, I watched his Q&A with the British Prime Minister, and it seemed like Trump was getting quite a few accolades because a lot of the questions were of the tone of, "Hey, illegal immigration in America has almost come down to zero, and yet we have a massive problem here in England. Energy prices are way down in the United States, drill baby drill, whereas our prices are high and we're using windmills." And the British Prime Minister got a lot of heat from some of his own constituent reporters, sort of saying, well, they're doing this in the U.S., and why couldn't we do this in England? Even on the Israeli situation, Trump said, look, I have a disagreement with the Prime Minister. The Israelis were attacked in the most horrific scene. I've seen the pictures and I've seen the films. And no, we support what the Israelis are doing. He wasn't going to back down and say, well, look, I believe in a Palestinian state. No, he says, I believe that they have a right to do what they're doing, and I support the Israelis. Will I change my tone once those hostages come home? He came out and flat out said, yes, I will have a conversation with Netanyahu after those 20 living hostages are free. Joe Visconti, Trump, he never backs down, and he is, to me, he is in mid-season form because when he talks about the things that he ran on cleaning up illegal immigration and securing that border. Check mark, he's done that. He ran on bringing down inflation. Not totally there yet, but we're down just a hair under 3%. The Fed cut rates 25 basis points this week. He ran on downsizing the federal government. He ran on mass deportation, starting with predominantly people that had criminal records. They passed Big Beautiful Bill. Joe, oil prices are down. Gas prices across the country are down. Egg prices are down. And yet there's this hardcore constituency then coming right out of social media. Trump's a fascist. He's this. We hate Trump. Through all of that, he's still sitting at right at a 50% approval rating, and his policies are working. Joe, where do we go from here after I just rattled off a list of accomplishments?
Well, you can see by the reaction of the left, beyond the violence and the rhetoric and everything that they're doing, but you can also see that Trump is no longer, and he hasn't since he was sworn in, counterpunching. he's out in front so far, and the times are so correctly demanding it that he no longer has to counterpunch as he did the first term. And people hit him in his own administration or wherever, and he had to come back at them. You're not seeing that anymore. This is why I think you saw the royal. I mean, it was unbelievable what the King of England did, and the horses. I don't know if anyone's catching this on TikTok or X. The videos are unbelievable. I mean, Trump has been welcomed into the club that they didn't let him in even when he went to Manhattan in the 70s. He's been welcomed in, and it's like a personal life curve that he's gone through. But the establishment, and I don't mean the one that's corrupt, the establishment of the way pomp and circumstance and rules, and King Charles did that. It was just, if you haven't caught it, you need to go Google or find out on YouTube how he was treated in England. It means a lot, as well as how, even if the press is writing crazy stuff against him, it's not because he's lying or doing anything different. He's past this point, and we've all gone with him. All of us are experiencing, even the left. They don't want to, they hate him, but they're all experiencing this thing where he doesn't have to counterpunch, and the times are demanding, and sensibilities are all. I think the fever's about to break for America and the world, and we're going to get back to decency and common sense. There's no reason we have to come to terms on common sense. We don't have to cross the aisle for common sense, but yet that's what they're asking, and they're not. So I see a lot of this is 9 months, less than 9 months, what we're watching. And beyond the policies, I think the fever of the country, the hate of the left, and all that is going to. I've been saying that on the show for a few weeks. Some leaders going to come out, or some leaders are going to come out. Bill Maher is not a leader, but he has been keep pivoting more and more. Enough of this nonsense. Enough of the nonsense. We're losing. We're never going to be. But what did they stand for? What did the left stand for? That they could actually try to salvage it. So their problem is there's nowhere to go, because Trump and the Republicans have taken over all common sense, all decency, and all things that Americans want, just regular life. To
Hey,
live in America.
Bernie, I want to come back to you on something on the Charlie Kirk issue again. I was really proud of J.D. Vance's performance this past week when on 9/11 he completely canceled his itinerary, flew out to help carry the casket with his good friend Charlie Kirk. I'm really proud of how he handled things. He went on the Charlie Kirk show this past week. Other notable conservatives like Ben Shapiro hosted the show. I mean, the solidarity behind Charlie Kirk, leading up from the president all the way down. Even President Trump mentioned him on Thursday in his speech in London. The outpouring of emotion for Charlie Kirk across the globe. But here's the dark side of it. I want to get your opinion on this, Bernie. In polling, this was from Rasmussen, 85% of Americans believe we are going to see more political violence. Bernie, what are your thoughts on this? You've been a military man. You're retired now, but once a military, always a military man. What do you make of this lack of optimism in the wake of this horrific assassination that a vast majority, 85%, is not a slim number, feel there's going to be more political violence?
I saw that poll, and I'm glad that you asked me the question. I am not a big fan of the media. I get most of my news from you guys. And so the issue of the day is that there are elements in the media, and remember, 6 companies own all the media in the United States. They don't like Trump, and they don't like Americanism. They don't like American exceptionalism. They don't like Pax Americana. And so they're going to say ugly things, and they're going to try to stir people up. And there are people out there that are radicalized or basically on the left that are looking for some reason. I just say, as I said before, the moral majority, there are regular folks out there that are decent and honest and just trying to take care of their kids and do their jobs and have a good life. And I would venture to say that most of America's like that. And when I see polls like that, I just ignore them, to tell you the truth.
I normally do too, but I do respect Rasmussen because in the last election, there were really 2 or 3 pollsters that really got it right. Trafalgar, Robert Cahaley's group, Inside Advantage, Ken Towery, and Rasmussen. They nailed the last election. I do have some respect for them. My concern is this, and I want to be fair to the majority of the Democratic Party here, but the vast majority of the Democratic Party did react appropriately relative to the aftermath of the shooting. A handful of radicals, excuse me, a la Ilhan Omar, I felt she crossed the line. There were some other, but not many. And I was, I don't want to say I was proud of the Democratic Party because I disagree with them on virtually everything, but I will give them some credit, at least in the aftermath of this. We didn't see the partisanship other than a handful of people, that one of which I just mentioned. So my belief is people in Congress are trying to tone down this rhetoric. Look, Congress, it doesn't matter whether you're Republican or Democrat, there is a genuine feel in Washington, D.C. that every representative and senator is a target. And when you look at the political events over the past 4 or 5 years, everything from the shooting in the ballpark where Steve Scalise damn near lost his life, Gabby Giffords going back a decade. I mean, these are not isolated. The Democratic Congresswoman and her husband of the state of Minnesota that were killed. There are disturbed people out there, and what's concerning to me is when I see young people, and this shooter is a good example. 2 years ago, this was a normal kid. Something's happened in the last couple of years. Not only him, but the kid that ended up shooting the United Healthcare executive, shot him in the back in New York City. I mean, what moral compass is it when you do acts like this and you feel justified? I'll throw something else out to you guys, and we're going to talk about it. But just on Wednesday night, 3 police officers in Pennsylvania, killed just trying to basically serve a domestic problem, and the shooters killed. So 3 of them killed, 2 in critical condition, and it's so prevalent here in our country. There's a high school, there was a school shooting, an assistant principal killed, barely made the news. So the violence in our society, it is politically wise. It seems to me that we as a country with our political leaders do need to try to tone that down. We're not going to excuse people that make ridiculous comments. And again, as you mentioned, Berney, earlier in the show, this Discord channel, Kash Patel and the FBI are investigating it. But Dan Bongino in a press conference said there's more than 20 on it. So we'll get to sort of the bottom of that. All right, listen, guys, terrific first half show. We're going to take a 1-minute break. But when we come back, we got a ton of other stuff to cover from last week. We got it all covered for you. Patriot TV, candidate Berney Flowers, great to have you with us. See you in 60 seconds.
Gold IRA companies are a dime a dozen, especially in conservative media. We vetted out 34 companies and chose Augusta Precious Metals.
With the lowest across-the-board spreads in the gold IRA industry, Augusta saves Americans thousands of dollars.
They are the only major gold IRA company that has 0 complaints from their customers. 0. None.
Augusta Precious Metals does not have commissioned sales reps, which means their goals are aligned with yours.
They were the only gold IRA company that demonstrated integrity and transparency without using gimmicks.
The informative one-on-one web conferences by Augusta Precious Metals answer all of their customers' questions before they make a move.
If you're ready to learn about protecting your wealth and retirement with gold and silver, request your free gold guide from Augusta Precious Metals today.
Visit patriot.tv/gold. That's patriot.tv/gold today.
And we're back, folks. All right, look, on Wednesday, the Federal Reserve did what was widely expected and lowered interest rates 25 basis points. There's a prevailing view in the marketplace that we're going to see additional cuts coming the rest of this year. There's 2 additional Fed meetings. We may get another 25 and 25 basis point cuts to bring the Fed funds rate, which is now hovering around 4%, into the mid-3s. But we'll see if that happens. 7 members of the current Federal Reserve Board voted no further decreases in rates. So we have to see how the data comes in. The employment numbers were starting to weaken some. Bear in mind, folks, we're still sitting at 4.3% unemployment. The economy looks like it's growing 1.5% to 2%. But with these tariffs going the way they're going, and with jobs still available, although again, 4.3 is historically low number. Interest rates coming down is going to help a lot of sectors. Listen, the old thing saying people vote their pocketbook. Joe, I'll start with you, and then Lieutenant Colonel Berney Flowers will come to you. Joe, the Fed cutting rates, no big surprise there. What do you see coming out the rest of the year economically now? Because we are seeing some good things in the economy.
Well, Trump's tariffs, Trump's policies are working, and he wants to get them going. He just a Gateway pundit actually reported Thursday that Lisa Cook, Trump wants to fire her. A federal appeals court blocked it. And on Thursday, Trump administration is asking the U.S. Supreme Court to intervene. Why is this important? He's trying to let the general public understand that the policies and many other parts of the administration also, but they have to be changed. And so he's fighting tooth and nail to deconstruct the blockades that have been happening all across, from trade, tariffs, regulations, and then internal within all the organizations and the Fed that are blocking and stopping. It's the president's executive. Who better would know what's coming next? All of his advisors, they have cabinet meetings and they text and email and talk and say, here's where we are today. It may not come out in a report or a monthly report from one of the federal organizations reporting success and unemployment, but president knows immediately before anyone else what's happening. He's got his finger on the pulse. And so he needs to get to the public to explain to them these are being blocked. And so I like this move to appeal to the Supreme Court because I don't think we would have got this reduction if he didn't hammer the hell out of the Fed chief for the last 6 months. He's imposing his will because he knows better, and most of them are afraid they're defaulting to policies that have failed in the past. We're in uncharted waters, and they don't know better in the Fed.
Well, the Fed's had somewhat of a challenge. I've been reading Dr. Michael Busser. He's a frequent contributor here at Schaftlein Report, and he's of the opinion he's too late, pal, and he's late again. He let inflation created too much money in the system, allowed inflation to get out of hand, and it's been slow to correct it. And now that the jobs numbers are certainly questionable, he was one advocating a 50 basis point cut. But Berney, let me go to you on this. You're running for office, okay? And people generally vote their pocketbook. What are your thoughts on the economy right now? And for Marylanders in your district, I've seen Governor Wes Moore get on national shows and talk about how great Maryland's doing, but something tells me that it could be better. And let me hear your ideas relative to the economy.
If Wes Moore said it, I'm against it. I'm joking around here, but I'm serious. I mean, the Federal Reserve is as federal as Federal Express. These people are private bankers. They try to play like they're part of the government. The president is pressing them hard to do what's right for the American people. Tariffs were the right move. I met Scott Bessent last year, and we had an in-depth conversation. I'm totally impressed with him as Treasury Secretary, and I know he's advising the president. Good human being. And the issue of the day is the Federal Reserve needs to be brought to heel, and Trump is the only person that can do it. And he's doing a great job. I'm behind him. And as far as Maryland is concerned, we are far too dependent upon the federal government. Businesses are leaving here because of high taxes, and Wes Moore is not helping here. And matter of fact, we just lost our AAA bond rating here in Maryland. That is cause for concern for me, and they've been raising taxes like crazy. So we got a lot of work here to do, and I'm hoping that I can get elected and have an effect of slowing down some of the negative things that the Democrats are doing in this one-party state.
Well, I wish you all the best in that race, and we got a lot more ground to cover. But you're right. I mean, if taxes are high from city, local, state, and then lump on the federal taxes on top of it, take-home pay is really important. And if you lose your AAA bond rating in a state, that's not a good thing. So
that's huge.
That's a big deal. Berney, let me shift subject away from the economy. I don't want to talk about something that you are familiar with as a military man. the Israeli Defense Forces, they launched their strike into Gaza City to clean out Hamas. Hamas has had every opportunity to come to the bargaining table, and they haven't taken advantage of it. And now, I mean, I've always been asking this question. So much of the Hamas leadership has been killed. You know, who's negotiating for them now? Well, we learned our answer this past week, where a handful of billionaires living in Qatar, you know, who are wealthy, you know, they're calling the shots, and these poor Palestinian people are suffering as a result of Hamas's taking over the Palestinian cause. Listen, Bernie, we saw people exiting Gaza, and yet the world community is trying to blame Israel. I firmly blame Hamas because Israel was attacked. They have every right to defend themselves. And they, in my opinion, they have to do what it takes to rid themselves from an existential threat and do what they can do. Totally have Hamas surrender and get their hostages back. Your thoughts on what the Israelis are doing?
I hate to see war. As somebody who has actually been in a couple, and I've been shot at and mortared and yada yada yada, and I still got all my fingers and toes. But you're right. Israel has a right to defend itself. And, you know, we got to be able to negotiate. And the Hamas people, they seem to be radicalized, that they don't want to have a discussion. I know that the president has gotten himself involved. If you notice what happened in, I believe it was, well, I believe India and Pakistan were having problems. I think Nepal was having some problems. The issue of the day is the president got involved, and he's involved in what's going on between Israel and Gaza. And I believe that he'll be able to solve this in time. I know the man's got a lot on his mind, but the Gazans have to come to the negotiating table. They can't just stand around and kill people. I mean, what they did on October 7th a while back ago is reprehensible. And yeah, I would be a little bit, what's the word, gun shy about working with them as well. But they're just digging their own hole. So I understand where the Israelis are coming from, and I support them.
Yeah, I'm in your camp on that, Joe. They've given Hamas. Trump effectively on Thursday, when he was at that press conference, said, "Return the hostages, and I'll speak to Netanyahu." I mean, he's given them an off ramp, and yet they don't seem to want to take it. Joe, what is it going to take to bring this thing to a conclusion?
Well, part of it is the Hamas is using their people to make, you know, all type of horrific videos of them starving. Some people are real starving, others are screaming. They're in a war zone, and they won't leave. And I've seen personally some videos on the leaflets that are dropped by Israel IDF. They're going out of the way to prepare the way, transportation to move people out of the war zone. Acres and acres and acres of food piled up. There's so much lies and propaganda coming from the Democrat Party and news media. Very little of truth is coming out objectively for how the IDF is working, because the tunnels, we've talked about it for a couple of years, the tunnels, decades of tunnels and armaments and missiles and human shields of their own people. And this was never going to go away. When Sharon gave Palestine, Gaza to the Palestinians, Hamas took over. We hate to repeat it all, but we have to for those who don't know the history. In 2005, they've been bombing the Jews for 25 years.
Yeah.
And you know, enough is enough. And that October 7th, that was the final straw. I don't blame them. It was slow motion genocide that was being done to Israel, terrorism, and so they're trying what they can. What really has to happen is, I don't believe the hostages are going to be released, or I don't believe they're alive at this point. But Israel is I've never seen it so strong, where they have very liberal aspects of their government. Everyone's on the same page. There's no infighting. They've all agreed, displace the people, bulldoze the place. You've got to have all the water mains, the sewers, they're all bombed up. All of it's got to go and be rebuilt. And the people have to be displaced with, you know, guarantees to be able to come home or whatever. It's a 20-year project. And this is just the very, very beginning. And the will of the American people has to be strong. And I think Trump, in 3.5 years from now, we're going to see a complete different Gaza. I think he's just letting Netanyahu do what he needs to do. But I believe they're doing it, the evidence I'm seeing, they're doing it much better in a war zone than any other nation has ever done in a war.
Yeah, I'm going to concur with you on that. And, we've seen some of the videos come out that dispel the lies that the propagandists at Hamas are trying to perpetuate. So, look, I support the Israelis. I mean, they were attacked and they're basically trying to protect themselves so that it literally never happens again. And that was the worst attack on the Jewish state since, World War II. All right, I want to shift subjects here a little bit. Berney, I want to come back to you. And we've seen a disturbing trend, and you've referenced it as Marxism in this show multiple times. But there's a growing push on the left, and they're not even hiding it anymore, towards socialism. 60% of the Democratic Party, 60%, believe socialism is a better alternative than capitalism. Socialism has never worked in the history of the world, and yet we've got clear evidence of that right now. Young people and Democrats are in favor of it. A couple of years ago, 60% of Americans had a favorable view of capitalism. That's back in 2021. Now it's down to 54%. Lost 6 points here. Berney, what is moving these young people, particularly the young Democrats, towards socialism? And what can we do as a country to reverse that?
I'm glad you asked that question. Here's my thoughts. I see everything as an old Cold Warrior, and the Marxists can't beat us militarily, so they're going to attack our soft underbelly, which happens to be our schools and our kids. Our kids have been indoctrinated for decades, and you look at the National Education Association, the teachers unions, they're more interested in political things than they are about educating students. And their agenda is generally Marxist. And the bottom line is we need to get involved with our schools, get involved with our school board, get involved with our local political organization, be it Democrat or Republican. But folks have to get engaged. Otherwise, just turning your kid over to some teacher who may have been indoctrinated or made to wear a dress to school when they're a man, most people don't know what's going on with their kids. And that is not cool. So, yeah, I know it's tough because most people have to have a two-parent family working, two parents working in order to make it in this economy. But sometimes you have to make some sacrifices. And, the people that I know that have done very, very well with their children and, doing all the things that, raising normal kids, a lot of times mom stays home and raises a kid. And that is something. And we also got to get away from this feminist trick of telling women that they can have it all. Nobody can have it all. Not men, not women, not anybody. Everybody has to sacrifice. Everybody has to compromise. Thomas Sowell once said that everything is a trade-off. So we can't trade away Americanism for socialism and expect everything to be okay. Because as you mentioned earlier, socialism never works. There was 100,000 deaths in Mao Zedong's China, but that's not taught in school. Ever thought about that? 20 million deaths in Stalinism? Nah, that's not working here. Not while I'm breathing.
No, and to take what you said, Berney, and Joe, might add to it, you throw in the social media aspect of it now. I mean, again, I'm not trying to date the three of us, but when we were high school kids, we weren't walking around with a cell phone in our hands. I mean, the social media aspect is polluting a lot of people and promoting these false promises of prosperity. Look, I know it's tough out there to save money, and a lot of young people are frustrated they can't buy a home. But again, if it weren't for President Trump policies, think about this: those interest rates skyrocketed under Biden. We had 9% inflation. And Trump and Jerome Powell, I mean, I hate lumping them together, but they have. Inflation's now down to 2.75, still above target, but way better than it was before. So, Joe, what do you make of these movement towards socialism, particularly of Democrats and young people?
Well, I live amongst them like Berney does here in Connecticut, and Mark, when you're out in California, you too. But actually, got some Republican not senators, but Congress people out in New York, like in California, but we have none in these blue states. It's all blue. So we live amongst it. It's a two-edged sword. Actually, there's a couple sides to this. I'd love to hit this for 1 minute and try to articulate because you dropped it on me, but I've been thinking about it for a while. Young people, financial pressure, everybody's got it on them after what we've seen happen in the last 10 years of our government and all the gaming of corporations, everything we've lived with. People have financial pressure on them. And if they're young and they want to keep their self-esteem, they're not going to have kids. They can't afford it. They can't get jobs. They know that. So there's a collective push. Socialism is like a shepherd dog. It's pushing a lot of people, not just young, but mostly young, to try to keep their self-esteem up, knowing they don't have money to go on a first date. You're seeing that on TikTok everywhere. Women are complaining, men don't have money. Nobody has money, that spare money. So they're not going to have kids in their teens and 20s, for the most part, at least plan it out. And so there's a collective to embrace an ideology or something that makes them say, these are the bad guys. This is what's going on. If we could just fictitiously change the world and get rid of capitalism, only because I can't pay for a first date meal, only because I can't have a kid and buy a house. So it's an easy thing under oppressive economic conditions to want to move away, move to a socialism. I think some of this may have happened in the Black community also over the decades, the oppression to vote Democrat as though there's an answer somewhere in this utopian world that doesn't really exist either. And so rather than individually make your mark and climb out of the financial problems you're having, it's easier to fit in and kind of get shepherded into this false socialism ideology. Bernie, 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 and not for this Bernie, but Bernie Sanders. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what was appealing to him under the Obama, Bush, and all that stuff that was happening. Let's go. And it gives him a cover personally as a man or even as a woman. I can't make it. I don't want to, and it's a self-talk thing. And it's easy to hold something up and say, let's go here. This could be the utopia. And it's not. It's a temptation. It's a diversion. And I think everyone that buys into it eventually wakes up to the fact when they can't get a job and they don't have money and they can't succeed, they're going to default into welfare. Now they got to go to work under Trump. They're going to default into drugs, into alcoholism, into things to try to survive because the psyche, I'm not a psychologist, but you're asking a lot of questions like this on the campaign trail. The psyche of the people is trying to remain with self-esteem. And I still love my country, I still love it. Yet you're oppressed and you've got to have an answer. And you don't find it in Wall Street if you're oppressed. You don't find it in the halls of Congress. You have nowhere to go. The Republican Party, I'm sorry, we're Republicans, but the country club Republicans, you're not going to find it there. And that's why they were made the boogeyman. And so to say all of that, it's financial oppression on young people to push them that way and still hold self-esteem value, even if they only got $5 in their pocket, to ask the first date to split the meal.
Well, I want to ask both you guys this because I'm broadcasting today from the great free red state of Florida. So, I sympathize to both of you there. Come down to Florida, not in September. It's hot as hell down here. It rains every day. But back on the big picture politically, Joe, I want to ask you first, and then Bernie, I'm going to come to you. We're a couple months out from that mayor's race in New York City, and as of right now, this weekend, there's still three other candidates. Joe, don't they have to whittle it down to one candidate to oppose Mondami, or New York is going to have an experiment with a socialist mayor?
Yeah, it's going to have to be Cuomo. He's the only one that's got what it takes, even though we know all the things about Cuomo. I'm not going to get into that. Trump has kind of alluded. He mentioned his name. He left it up in the air. But I think we need to prepare our minds for the unthinkable that somebody who very charismatic, like Obama was, will come into power. And we can only hope that the safeguards of laws, the republic, regulations, propriety, that he moves towards the center from his radical positions. But I think you're going to see a lot of Democrats support him in the hope, like they did with Black Lives Matter, in the hope that they won't get looted, their buildings, businesses won't get burnt down when there's strife with George Floyd. So I'm seeing that now, and they're moving that way to support him in the hopes that they can turn him with support. It's in between that and like I said, the move for Mamdani to move to the center. I think he's going to move to the center, but he's got AOC. It's a hotbed of
Yeah.
communists. They're not socialists, radical Islamists, the whole bit. It's everything. And that's why I think he's had 45% of Jewish voters in Manhattan vote for Trump. He did very good in New York, and so it's up to them to either take the bait and go for it. So I say it's a good experiment. Let it be. Trump already said, I'll take it over. I'll take their money away if they do crazy stuff. So let them do what they're going to do. And let's move on to Bernie's race and support him and try to push people his way.
No, that's a great lead in. Bernie, I do want to come to you now because you come across to me as the happy warrior. I noticed this about Republican candidates, even Republican candidates as yourself, blue state. You're ready to fight the fight. You're putting on a smile on your face. You're going after the voters and saying, hey, this is what I bring to the table. And when I see Democrats, it's always this negativism. Whereas coming on the show today and everything we've talked about, you have such a positive message. Bernie, you got about 2 minutes left. Close it out. Where can people go if they want to help your campaign? What can they do to help? And what's your message out there that you can play out for the voters in Maryland?
Mark, thank you. I am an America First guy. People don't seem to understand that I was in the Ukraine before it got bad. I wasn't even supposed to be over there. I've been to Afghanistan. I've been to Iraq. I've been all over Europe. I've been everywhere but on Antarctica and South America. The issue of the day is that we got it pretty good here. And this victim mentality that is pushed by the Democrat Party is going to cause America to fail. And I will not let that happen, not while I'm breathing. So I'm a happy warrior. I've always been a happy warrior, and I always will be. Mom Donnie up in New York, this guy is a socialist. I can't believe that America or New York has fallen for his rhetoric because things have to be paid for. Folks don't just do things for free, and that is the fallacy of socialism. And more important, there's honor in work. There's honor in work. So there's jobs that need to be done. Let's get rid of the non-citizens that are part of America, send them on home, let them go home by themselves like the administration's doing. But the issue of the day is this is a great place. It's the greatest place that's ever been on the history of this planet, and I'm ready to fight for it. So let's get rid of this victim mentality that's been perpetrated on the American youth. Get rid of that and get back to Pax Americana.
Well, Lieutenant Colonel Berney Flowers, it has been such a pleasure having you on today, and I wish you come back on the show. We will welcome you with open arms, and we wish you much success in your upcoming race. Joe, great commentary as always. You're right in the belly of the beast there in Connecticut. Both of you guys are dealing with blue state things, and you're fighting on a daily basis. And I'm going to share a little bit about what Bernie said, too, as a closing comment. I am in his camp. I think the vast, overwhelming majority of Americans, whether Democrat, Independent, or Republican, were absolutely repulsed by the events of what happened, whether from Charlie Kirk to the 3 police officers in Pennsylvania, the school shooting. People this country is made up of good and kind-hearted people. Yes, we have political differences. And only the fringiest of the fringe, which we talked about someday, make the headline news. And as Bernie talked about earlier, a lot of people, they get up, they go to work, they'll vote in elections. They want to be safe, get their kids educated, and they keep it straight down the middle. And for all the angst and trouble that this country's gone through, and political assassinations seem to rise to the top, the Schaftlein Report and Patriot TV firmly stands behind Turning Point USA and its founder, and at this point, it's martyr Charlie Kirk. And I am so proud that President Trump, J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, and many, many others will be in Arizona for that funeral this coming Sunday. I believe it's at 2 o'clock Eastern, 11 o'clock Pacific time. I'm expecting a large house. And again, the prevailing thought on Charlie Kirk was job well done, my man. And we will second that from Patriot TV and Schaftlein Report. And our blessings go out to his wife and children, and we wish them much success. That's it for Schaftlein Report today. Folks, we will be back next week. Stay safe, prosperous, And we will be back at Patriot TV. See you in a week.